Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Top of the evening to you, and welcome to the March 17th, 2015 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It's my privilege to call this meeting to order and wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room. If you haven't already done so, please pick up a copy. You can follow along with our proceedings tonight. There will be opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on our agenda, as well as a segment that will be later in the evening under item 11, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature, items that are not appearing on tonight's agenda. It is our privilege to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, and tonight we have some very special guests. We have an extremely well-behaved, thoughtful, and inquisitive group of Tiger Scouts here tonight. Pack 89 are here with us tonight, and you guys are going to come up and help us lead the pledge tonight, right? Yeah. So come on down, Scouts. Come on up here. Nice. Probably ask some of the toughest questions all year. So, gentlemen, we're going to turn around, right? Flags over here. Just like we practiced it. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Terrific. Now remember, you got to stay there for a second. Why? Whoa. Photo shoot. We're going to have to put some padding on that stair. All right, nice job, guys. I know, remember what those pencils are for, right? Let's get all that homework done. All right, with that, I'd like to ask for our village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Rankin? Here. Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. We have a couple of presentations tonight. I'd like to start with, I think we'll start with hearing about the District 99 band trip, which was recently taken to Carnegie Hall. Quite an extraordinary event. We saw a lot of really impressive photos and information about it on social media. It's a beauty of it. You can almost feel like you were there. Must have been really a remarkable experience. I couldn't possibly do it justice. And tonight we have Briar Teague here, a living legend in District 99 music, along with Glenn Williams sitting behind him. Thank you both for being here tonight. And we'd love to hear more about it. I know the community was pretty excited about it, and I'm sure they'd like to hear more of the details and share your experience. So welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor. As you mentioned, we are here on behalf of District 99 and our recent band tour to New York. On behalf of Fine Arts Department Chairperson Glenn Williams from South High School, my name is Briar Teague, and I would like to thank the council for inviting us here this evening to share some information with you. It was really a pleasure to work with these 350 student musicians from North High School and South High School as we traveled to New York and the famed Carnegie Hall stage. Shared with you this evening are copies of the promotional ticket flyer that was developed by Mr. Marty Volker, one of our District 99 art teachers, as well as copies of the official playbill from the Carnegie Hall concert. And we hope you will enjoy reviewing these materials at your convenience later. And I am joined this evening by 4 students who participated in our recent District 99 band tour to New York. 2 are from North, 2 are from South. All 4 student musicians did perform with us at Carnegie Hall on March 2nd of 2015. And they're here tonight to share some brief reflections about their recent trip. But before we turn it over to them and they introduce themselves to you, we would like to share a short video presentation with the council tonight that captures a few of the tour highlights. The musical soundtrack that you'll hear is taken directly from the Carnegie Hall concert recordings. We hope you enjoy it.
very cool.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Lee. I'm a senior at South. And I'm going to say a few words about visiting Ithaca College. I think when we got to Ithaca, it was the point where I realized how incredible this experience was. I know, like, in band is just like another period in my day, and just kind of like it's the same thing every day. So getting to play on the stage and getting to experience what music is like on a different turf really opened my eyes as to like, how beautiful and how purposeful our music is and just how real it is. So, yeah, it was a very cool experience. And the food there was good too. I had about 6 pieces of cake.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Belle. I'm a junior at North, and I play percussion. Something that really stood out to me on the trip is the sense of community that you build with not only your classmates and the people at your school, but also like your sister school. Like, I had the opportunity to meet kids from South and talk with them that I never would have had the opportunity to do otherwise if not for the trip, because, you know, concert band is one of those things where it's not like the orchestra where they perform together or anything. So this was like, it was really cool to be able to talk to, for me, the other South High percussion and, you know, like, oh, that's so cool, I love your part, and like see what they're good at, see what they like to do, why they love music and why they love percussion, or, you know, anything like that. And I heard from other kids, like, the musical interactions that went on were phenomenal because of the opportunities we had to work with each other. And that's just so cool to me that we were able to do that.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Cassie. I'm a senior at South High, and I'm going to say a few words about touring New York City. So I thought that it was absolutely incredible to be in a new city other than Chicago, and it was my first time going there. And we did things from the sobering experience of going through the 9/11 Museum to the exhilarating experience of being at the top of the Rockefeller Center, which from someone who isn't a fan of heights was kind of scary, but it was definitely a lot of fun. And just, it was really important that our community was, or showcased all of the culture of New York, and to me that was just really cool. And it wasn't just about the music, it was about the experience and the kind of time that we had at New York, and to me it was just fantastic in every way.
Thank you for sharing that.
Hello,
Good
my
evening.
name is Todd Griffin. I am a junior at Downers Grove North, and I play the tuba, so you could probably tell them. All right, so the thing about Carnegie Hall is, like, everybody seems to know at least a little bit about it, even from an earlier age. It's just Carnegie Hall, that name. It's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. And that's true. We practice so hard just to come from Downers Grove North near Chicago to go all the way to New York just to play in Carnegie Hall itself. We spent so much time even starting to learn music before the year before us ended. We practiced through the summer and then through all the band classes up until like the last day before we even left for the trip. And what's scary though is that we practice all of this inside of either a band room or a hall that is closer to home. We had no idea what it was going to be like to practice and play inside of a hall like Carnegie Hall. When we got there and to practice, I was just like so eager. I remember myself, like, usually as a tuba player, I have to play out a bit more, just get that low sound going. But in the Carnegie Hall stage, it was just amazing. It's the fact that is, when you practice so hard for something, and you put so much time and effort into learning something just for putting it all together with so many amazing instrumentalists, all for the purpose of playing at Carnegie Hall and just having fun with it. It was just an amazing experience I just cannot put words to. I am not an emotional type of guy, but I can definitely say during the one song, Angels in Architecture, that near the end of it, I just, I got emotional. It's just all that work. It's just everything culminating into one little thing. And I say little, but it's gigantic. But the moments that I felt while playing is just something I'll have with me for the rest of my life. The only sad part is that it'll probably be a long time before I get to play again on the stage. But I mean, it's such a great experience to play on this stage. I just don't have words to describe. It's one of those things where you just had to be there. It's just wonderful.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for having us here this evening. My name's Glenn Williams, and I want to share with each of you what wonderful ambassadors these students were for our community and for our schools. We travel because we believe group travel expands the boundaries of the classroom in a unique manner. And even further, we believe that it sparks individual growth in students in a way that nothing else possibly can. So that's why when we say we're taking 350 students in 7 coach buses to Manhattan, we're excited about it. And I know that doesn't cause a lot of people to be excited. But these students, these and the other on the 7 buses, represented this community in amazing ways. And I'm going to give you some points of data rather than just my opinion. We had multiple places where students had to be somewhere on time and ready to go. We had no student late over the whole 5-day trip. It was really remarkable. I got feedback, as did Mr. Teague, from waitstaff, from bus drivers, and from tour guides who told us that these students were among the finest that they'd worked with in their recent memory. So when we tour, the name of our schools, if you just think about it, it's Community, High School District, Downers Grove, South and North. And the community and the Downers Grove parts are pieces that we take very, very seriously, and we were very pleased and proud to represent the schools and this community on this trip. And we just want you to know what a wonderful job these students did as ambassadors of the Village of Downers Grove. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Thank you, Mr. Teague. Thank you to all of you for being here tonight and for being such wonderful ambassadors of the Village of Downers Grove, and for sharing this amazing experience with us. Probably the closest I'll ever get to Carnegie Hall, or maybe going by in a cab. So it's quite an accomplishment, and we're all very proud of you. If anyone else wants anything else they want to share, Commissioner Olson?
Well, as a former member of the Downers Grove South High School Marching Mustangs, concert band, jazz band, I think this is just a great opportunity. Congratulations to the programs and to each of the students for what you were able to accomplish. I wish we had the opportunity when I was there from 2003 to 2007 to go, but alas, I'm so glad that you had that opportunity. And I just encourage, for the students, encourage you to continue to pursue music, whether that be directly as you move into college and after college, whether that be directly through band or whether that be through in new ways, picking up whether it's new instruments informally or just continuing to engage in music throughout your life. I found, as a longtime band member, I think that was a really valuable part of my high school experience. It was a valuable part of my college experience, and music continues to play a part in my life to this day. So just want to encourage you to keep that with you and keep these experiences that Mr. Williams, Mr. Teague, and Mr. Rosalie, Mr. Miller, the other directors have instilled in you. So congratulations.
Thank you. Commissioner Neustadt?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. I think it's important to note that while this was the most recent trip, the District 99 Community High School Band has done a number of big trips. I don't know if I have this one right. Was there a Rose Bowl parade trip?
No, that's a great goal.
All right, so that's the next one. Macy's Day Parade.
We've been, this is the 15-year anniversary of participating in the Dublin St. Patrick's Day Parade, and both schools have been in the London New Year's Day Parade.
That's the one I'm thinking of. So think about that. 10 years ago in Dublin on St. Patrick's Day, the Community High School Downers Grove Band participating there. That's remarkable. And now at Carnegie Hall and at the London New Year's Day Parade. The experiences these young people have and in the way that they represent our community, not just Downers Grove, but the band comes from all over our surrounding communities as well. To hear Mr. Williams say the fine words about the young men and women, it's just remarkable. So thank you for representing Downers Grove and our community very well. Good luck in your next endeavors, and I can't wait to see more clips and pictures and hear more music from your experience there. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, real quick, just for our viewers at home and some of us out there like myself, can you give a little history of how you got invited, how this all became a reality, and if there's something that the community can do in the future to help continue?
Well, thank you for asking that question. Our programs do travel on a biannual basis, and so every time we finish a tour, we start thinking and visioning about where we might want to go and lead students the next time, and where are those opportunities that can expand the musical and travel horizons of our students, as Mr. Williams was talking about. A couple of years ago, actually about 18 months ago, we started looking at New York as a possible destination, and actually we're drawn to that area because of some connections we have with faculty at Ithaca College. They mentioned our opportunity to do some workshops there at Ithaca, which was a really important part of this tour. In the planning process, we reached out to a promoter who has done some concerts before at Carnegie Hall with college groups, and asked if there was any possibility that they would ever consider having high school ensembles play. And through working with the promoter, who also worked with the artistic board of Carnegie Hall, they gave us an opportunity to pitch a program to them that they would be willing to accept as a feature-length program on a weeknight concert. We were all kind of joking that the 2 nights before us was the Vienna Philharmonic, and so we thought that was kind of fun to say that the Vienna Philharmonic opened for Downers Grove and South High School. But in truth, it was through the hard work of this promoter and the hard work of our staff in District 99 to put together a multi-generational program that featured not only our current students, but some many alumni of both North and South High School who came back to be a part of this program as guest soloists and artists. I think we were able to put together a program that was worthy of a Carnegie Hall performance.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's really neat. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Any other comments? Other than that, just thank you again for being here and sharing this extraordinary experience with us. You truly are amazing ambassadors of the Village Downers Grove and future leaders of our community and beyond. And we look forward to following your further exploits and accomplishments. And thank you for sharing a little bit of this with us. We feel like we can live a little bit vicariously through your accomplishments, and it's good to know. So really appreciate you being here tonight and sharing this with us, and congratulations and best luck in the future on such additional amazing events. Well, thank you again for being here, and terrific video, by the way. I'm sure if that's not already on the cable station, it will be very soon. I've already gotten, I think, 20 tweets asking for copies of it while they're sitting here. Maybe a slight exaggeration. Thank you. We have one other presentation, and that presentation is with respect to the anniversary of the Officer Richard Barth Memorial. And to give that presentation, we have tonight with us our police chief, Robert Porter. Chief Porter, good evening. And thank you again, Mr. Williams, Mr. Teague, good to see you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm afraid I'm going to have to completely switch gears here. Tomorrow, March 18th, represents the 41st anniversary of the most tragic day in the history of the Downers Grove Police Department. On this day, 41 years ago, one of our very own officers, Officer Richard Barth, was slain in the line of duty. He had been speaking with 2 young men who had just committed a residential burglary when one of them pulled out a handgun and shot Officer Barth, leaving him to die in what is now known as Hooper's Hollow Park. Officer Barth is the only Downers Grove police officer killed in the line of duty. We hope and pray that this never changes. Officer Barth's death is a grim reminder of the dangers associated with our chosen profession. These are tough times right now for our police officers. There have been multiple incidents recently in which officers have been attacked simply because they wore the badge and the uniform. This is simply not acceptable by any standard. Tomorrow our staff will be wearing black bands on our badges, and we will have a black ribbon attached to our squad cars in honor of Officer Barth's dedication and service. I would ask our citizens to simply take a moment tomorrow to reflect on the sacrifice that Officer Barth made while serving his community, and to continue to support our police officers as they work extremely hard to serve and protect the entire Downers Grove community each and every day. I would also ask that we please keep Officer Barth's family in our thoughts and prayers tomorrow. I know I speak with them every year on the anniversary, and tomorrow is going to be a tough day. It always is for them. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I think one or more of us say it every year that when the Officer Richard J. Barth Memorial Service is held over at Barth Pond, it is a truly moving and reflective ceremony that if you haven't seen it in person, I would strongly recommend it. You will be forever touched. It is something that can be viewed on video, but again, I think being there in person is quite amazing. One thing I always have to point out is that there's a plaque that was installed in Officer Barth's honor at the Downers Grove Police Station. which I've often pointed out I think may describe him best. It states that Officer Richard J. Barth was a caring professional who made the ultimate sacrifice for the people in the community he held most dear. His dedication will be remembered by his colleagues and the community that he served. And that is something that we continue to do each and every year in honoring his memory and the sacrifice that both he made and his family made, and wishing very much that he continues to look over all of our brave men and women in the police force and first responders to make sure that he remains the only officer ever killed in the line of duty in Downers Grove. Well, thank you, Chief. And that brings us to item number 4, which pertains to minutes of council meetings. We have one set of minutes to approve tonight. Those are our minutes from our March 10th, 2015 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second. Any changes, questions, comments, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Brings us to item 5, which pertains to council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the village council to share goings-on in the community and other items of interest with those watching at home or here in the audience tonight. We'll start tonight with Commissioner Jose.
No report, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rankin.
I'd like to invite you all to the pancake breakfast that the Cub Scout Pack 86 from Leicester School is hosting this weekend, Saturday, at the Moose Lodge from 8 to 11. My sons participate in that pack, and I'll be flipping pancakes. I think it's $5, but it helps to fund field trips and efforts that the Cub Scouts do. So if you're hungry on Saturday morning, head on over to the Moose. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Durkin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just want to wish everyone a very happy and safe St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you. Commissioner Neustadt.
Thank you, Mayor. Tomorrow night, there is a special workshop managing your stormwater right here at Village Hall at 7 p.m., presented by our stormwater administrator, Karen Dalton Lang. So come on down and learn more about how to manage your stormwater. There's also going to be a representative from the Conservation Foundation here to talk about ways that you can help out with your stormwater project needs on your private property. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Olson.
No report.
Commissioner Barnett.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. I have no report at this time, so we'll move to item 6, which is our consent agenda. And we do have an item we're moving off the consent agenda. That's item D, which we will move to the active agenda. So with that change, items A, D accepted through L. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second. Any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to the remaining items on the consent agenda? Good evening.
Good evening, Bella Bowen, 829 Clyde Drive. I just wanted to make a suggestion that maybe the village can begin looking into is the fire hydrant painting program. Why can't we include the children in our community and have contests for painting hydrants in their neighborhood? Might be a way to save some money and encourage community participation. There's lots of troops, we keep seeing them here. Maybe we can include them in a project like this.
Thank you for the suggestion. Could be another version of Pluggy's Pals.
You know, over the years I've been here, I've asked the same question that Ms. Bowen had brought up. Do we have a response for that?
We can get you a report on that.
I would like that. Because I know walking the neighborhoods, I've seen some fire hydrants that have been painted, and my son even pointed them out, so I think it'd be a great idea.
You can call it Pluggy's Picassos.
I grew up with a fire plug my mother painted every year, so it was tradition. Kept the dogs with it.
I'm just going to leave that one right where it is. Any other questions from the audience with respect to the remaining items on the active agenda, or on the consent agenda, excuse me? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin? Aye. Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. It brings us to item 7, our active agenda. You have several items on the active agenda. First one is item 7A. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance adopting the 2015 zoning map?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the audience?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners and staff. I'm Gordon Goodman. I live at 5834 Middle. And there's a portion of our zoning map that is in Downers Grove, but the park district associated with that on the eastern portion of our village is not Downers Grove Park District, it's the Westmont Park District. Some time ago, I tried to help the residents in that area to change their park district affiliation because they really felt they were definitely part of Downers Grove, and we were unsuccessful at that time. A lot of water's passed under or over various appliances since then, and so I'm hoping that maybe your staff can work with the Park District staff and see if the village and, well, actually the Park District of Westmont would be a little more cooperative this time in adjusting the Park District boundaries to match the village boundaries. I know we've been very successful in working on the problem that I brought to your attention earlier of the maintenance of the Good Samaritan Hospital, because you had been able to work cooperatively with the Forest Reserve, the Park District, and the hospital staff. So I'm hoping that bringing this other long-term question to your attention might be profitable at this point, too. Thank you.
Can I respond? I'm in that group, Mr. Goodman, and what I've been told from the Westmont Park District is that because they have bonds still, that it would look unfavorable for them to take people away from their taxing bodies, or their tax bill, I should say. But the Park District has been generous enough that anyone that falls under that gets resident rates.
From the Downers Grove Park District, the Downers Grove Park District has been very accommodating.
Exactly.
And we're hoping that maybe in the future, by starting to work on it now, when those bonds can be retired, you will have the possibility of joining the park district you want to be in. But I think it does require a good deal of advance work to make sure no continuing bonds are issued, and that there really is time that both or all three jurisdictions have planned on for this transition to take place. And that's why I'm raising it, that yes, the Downers Grove Park District was very cooperative from the beginning with those residents and has been accommodating, but I'm not sure how many more decades I can come to remind people about this. So I'm asking you and your staff to keep that in mind, continue to talk to the Westmont Park District about making sure future bonds don't create the same problem that we're dealing with now. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments on the 2015 zoning map adoption? Good evening.
Hi, Mike Anderson, 424 Hill Street. Is this the same map that we saw on the website that you're voting on?
Basically, yes, it should be. It's an adoption, annual requirement that we adopt the map to reflect what our zoning is.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
My parcel has two different zonings on it. Is this the place to bring that up, or is there another place?
This would be the place to bring it up.
Okay. It's split in half of, I think it's R1 and R2, whatever that means. It's just, there's two on the same parcel, so just, I don't know what else to say.
And your address is?
424 Hill.
Yes, thank you.
We can work with Mr. Anderson to address that issue. Of course, we can't change any zoning or reflections on the map tonight legislatively, but we certainly can work with any resident who has any zoning questions or issues, and we'll do that in this case.
Yeah, I'm happy to work off, on a sidebar or whatever on that. It's not an issue. I'm not trying to get a zoning one way or the other. It's just that it happens to have two zonings.
No, we appreciate you pointing it out. what the manager was indicating is we're simply adopting the map tonight. We're not actually changing or making any zoning determinations. It's just, we have to adopt the map every year to reflect what the zoning is. To the extent that you have zoning that falls into 2 different categories in the same parcel, that's something we'll be happy to work with you on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight and pointing it out. Any other questions from the audience with respect to the adoption of the 2015 zoning map? Questions or comments from the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin? Aye. Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The matter passes unanimously. Brings us to item 7B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance amending parking restrictions on Burlington Avenue?
So moved.
Second. Any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from members of the village council?
I just have a question for staff in reference to the e-comment that we got. Has this been addressed? I didn't see any change in the cheat sheet, and I was just wondering if this has been addressed, what the, I believe it's the commissioner on that committee has pointed out regarding their votes.
We'll look into that. He's not part of the commission, not associated with the village, but we will look into it and make sure this is correct. We believe is correct.
His comment is correct, or what we're voting on is
The
correct?
way you're voting on is correct.
So do we vote on it until this is investigated, or what do we do?
Staff is confident you can proceed with the vote tonight.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, members of the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin? Aye. Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The matter passes unanimously. And now we need to take up the item that was taken off the consent agenda, which is motion 2015-6155, a motion to authorize participation with Lake County in the joint purchase of bulk rock salt for the 2015-2016 season. Do I have a motion to that effect for purposes of discussion?
I think the new motion is to authorize the purchase of 2,000 tons of bulk rolled salt via the state contract.
Second.
Questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin? Aye. Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Matter is adopted unanimously. It brings us to the end of our active agenda. Brings us to item 8, our first reading or our workshop agenda. I won't go into explaining what it is because we have no items on our first reading or workshop agenda tonight. So that brings us to the mayor's report. And you may recall last week we had a resolution before us urging the governor and the General Assembly to protect full funding of the local government distributed fund reserve, with some questions and comments that Commissioner Barnett brought up and thought they were good points to add. The resolution has been revised, so I will ask for a motion to adopt that resolution.
So moved. Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. I stand in full support of the resolution. I just wanted to take the opportunity to clarify a couple of comments that I made a few weeks ago that may have been misinterpreted a little bit. I, at one point, commented that the village is well-positioned to deal with whatever cut may be coming from the state, which I believe is true, because we've got an excellent staff. We win budgetary awards, it seems, almost every year, and we have a very lean culture that leads us to be able to react nimbly to these sorts of things. What that doesn't mean, though, is that this wouldn't have an impact on our organization. We are 75% roughly personnel. We've been operating in a very lean fashion since the economic crash in 2008, 2009. And I can tell you, having sat up here now for 2 years and having been to countless village meetings before that, this village is now operating very, very conservatively, very leanly. And any cut in our local government distributed fund revenue will have an impact. We're no longer cutting fat, we're cutting muscle and bone. And I think it's important to point that out, and I think my comment previously had been taken by some to mean that it would not have an impact on the village of Downers Grove, that business as usual would simply continue. And that is not the case. There will be difficult decisions to make if these reductions are made and there is no corresponding decrease in the burden that the state places on us in the form of unfunded mandates and what have you. So just wanted to take just a second and clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments? Just Commissioner Durkin?
Yeah, thank you. I was at a luncheon last week where the governor actually spoke in light of this budget speech that he had presented. And I can tell you, walking away from that luncheon and having a one-on-one with the man, he's very serious when he talks about taking the 50%, talking about the sales tax, or excuse me, the property tax freeze. He's very adamant about it. And I know that, Mayor, you had attended the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus on Friday where he had the same message, and I'll be attending a dinner on Thursday this week where I know he's going to have the same message. So I know that by the time this possibly could become a reality, there'll be a new council seated up here, and I cannot encourage for the record that we take his word serious enough that we have a solid plan in place. I know that I agree with Commissioner Jose, that we're in a very good position because we did a lot of the heavy lifting back in 2007. Several years ago, this idea floated again, and we acted upon it. Potentially becoming a reality, but I think this time it is a reality. It may not be exactly 50%, it may be less than that, but the fact is the man is serious about what he's talking about, and we better act accordingly. I would also ask either yourself, Mayor, or for the village staff, when this is passed tonight, what's the actual plan of the document? Are we joining other communities that are passing similar resolutions? Are we going to encourage a letter writing campaign from our residents? Because we all know that when the representatives, both in the House and in the Senate, when they receive mail from us, it's like a big deal when they get more than 10 pieces. So what is our actual action besides just passing a resolution? Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm happy to answer that question because passing the resolution is just one step. Number one, all municipalities in DuPage County are being asked to adopt very similar resolutions in order to show unity, that we're all, our strength is in our unity of voice, and that we're all speaking one voice about, number one, the importance of LGDF to our community and what a 50% reduction might mean to our communities. And while we understand that this is part of the reason why we rewrote the language, and I appreciate Commissioner Barnett giving me the opportunity to take a crack at it, while we point out that it would be a $2.4 million hit to us, that we also recognize that the governor's goals are for a balanced budget and ensuring that the state's financial systems are sustainable, drive economic growth, create jobs, put people back to work, and enhance public safety to our communities. But loss of revenue of that effect all at once without anything to offset it may have the misalignment of actually adversely impacting our ability to provide public safety services. And so we went on to say in the resolution that the municipalities want to instead work closely with the governor's office and the General Assembly to identify solutions to fix the state's financial mess, but in a way that will not undermine the ability of municipalities like Downers Grove and others throughout the state to provide essential services to their constituents. And also, among those issues, we would like to see serious efforts made to reduce the over 280 costly unfunded mandates that municipalities are saddled with, to remove barriers to additional consolidation, collaboration, and cooperation, and to enhance and expand our ability of self-determination and local control. Those messages are being communicated loud and clear, not just by municipalities in DuPage County, but through the conferences of governments that exist throughout the state. So, for example, the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference, of which we are one of 33 members, has already sent out communications in both direct contact with the governor's office as well as joint pieces with, let's see, by last count, I think it was 7 or 8 other COGs in the area, COGs being conferences of governments like DuPage Mayors and Managers. That same message being sent to the governor. I myself, as the president of DMMC, signed that letter along with other presidents of COGs throughout the state. There are websites that are being set up that will allow residents to become informed about the issue and then through that same website directly communicate with the governor's office and the General Assembly and legislators on the importance of this issue to our community. And so on and so forth. There will be continuing efforts to use all means that we have available to us, whether it's through lobbyists or through direct communication, or it's good old-fashioned getting in a car and driving down to Springfield, of which there are multiple trips planned. If you're available, we'd invite you to join us.
I have 3 trips anyway, so I will have plenty of time.
You have time for another one? Come on down. So the short answer to your question is there are many things planned to not only get the message out about the importance and what the potential impact would be in that major reduction of LGDF to our community, but more importantly, how we can ask for the governor's office and the General Assembly to work with us, and we would like to work with them to both fix the state's problems, because state's problems affect us. We would like to see them fixed, but in a way that doesn't undermine our basic ability to provide essential services to our constituents.
Great, thank you.
So we try to incorporate some of that very language into the revised resolution, so.
And I think the extra week was very important, because this is a lot better drafted.
Well, the other one was the basic one, so this is
We
the
got
Downers
more
Grove.
meat and bones, you know, considering.
This is the Downers Grove version, so I appreciate the opportunity that my colleagues allowed me to add some language to it. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Resolution passed unanimously. That's all I have in the mayor's report, so that brings us now to item 10, the manager's report. Mr. Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor. No report tonight.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 11. There's no attorney's report?
No, partner. They took me off the agenda.
March 17th, 2015. I think this may be the only time in 12 years that there hasn't been an attorney's report. Item 11, public comments. This is an opportunity for members of the audience to comment on matters of a general nature with respect to items that are not on tonight's agenda. So any members of the public who have any comments of general nature, please come to the podium, introduce yourself, and we welcome hearing from you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and staff. My name is Bill Roble, 7800 Queens Court in Downers Grove. And I'm so happy it's St. Patrick's Day because I got my Irish up. If it was here about a month ago, I would be appearing as number 4 for public comment of a general nature. And I took the issue up by email with the council, village manager and assistant manager last Wednesday after noticing that the agenda had changed the last 2 meetings, and it's definitely demonstrated tonight, where public comment of a general nature is now number 11. It used to be number 4. And just a couple of months ago, there was an organizational chart up on the screen showing that the taxpayer, the public, has number 1 spot on the organizational chart, followed by the council, going down to the village manager and the attorney, and then all the staff positions. I'm particularly disturbed that the village council and the manager and someone, whoever the ambiguous person is, took the decision to change the protocol of this agenda in the council. This protocol has been in place for years. Obviously, I've been here many times, didn't have to wait till the end of the meeting. I watched good citizens, last 2 meetings, wait till the end of the meeting to make a comment. I wish you would review this and put it back where it belongs. Citizens should be able to speak when there's enough citizens here to take notice of what they're speaking about, not at the end of the meeting when people drop off. That's my comment. And I never did get an answer to my email, which I addressed to the manager and the assistant manager, and I copied all you councilmen. Today is 6 days later. Obviously, the village staff is overworked. And I'm particularly got my Irish up. And I think you all have to be taken to task for putting the public at the end of the agenda. That's my comment. If you choose to answer me, I'd be pleased to hear that. But otherwise, I'm used to 6 days of silence, so I wouldn't be offended to hear some more silence.
I'm happy to answer you, Mr. Roll, and apologies for none of us getting back to you beforehand. The reality is that we have made adjustments to the agenda of various types over the last, at least I can remember, the last 12 years. Different organizations do public comment differently. For example, if you look at District 99 or District 58, they will handle public comment interspersed throughout their meetings. It's been at the front of our meetings, but there's no rhyme or reason that it has to be in the front or the back. I was basically asked to move it to the back, and there have been requests for experimentation with our agenda, how many times we meet, what time we meet. We used to meet on Mondays. You may remember that from many years ago. Village Council meet on Mondays, not on Tuesdays. So it was moved to Tuesday. Some people thought that was better. Some people thought it was terrible. We used to have council questions first, and then we took public comment. We switched that around to try to see maybe we could hear from residents before hearing from the council. Some people like that better. Some people don't. This was a request to move public comment to the back to try it out because we were experiencing, as I understood the request, we were experiencing the inverse of what you were saying. There were people who came here on a specific agenda item, and they were very passionate about the issue, wanted to speak about it, and we were experiencing situations where there was over an hour of general comment. So people who had come down here to talk about a specific item that was on the agenda ended up waiting over an hour to speak and sometimes couldn't and had to leave. And if there was even another topic, then as you go down further in the agenda, they may not even been here for something that was on the agenda. So we were hearing some criticism from some folks that had their Irish up about that, saying, well, gee, we're hearing all these comments from people about general issues, but I'm actually on the agenda and I had to wait until 8:15 to make a comment. That's not fair to me. So we tried moving it around a little bit, and as I'm experiencing, as we all experience, anytime we make a change to our agenda, because you're right, folks get used to it being a certain way, and if it changes and it's no longer as predictable as it was, then that does have a tendency to create some waves. So that's the answer. That's why it was done, because it was requested. For that reason, as I understand it.
Requested by who?
I'm not going to throw anybody under a bus, but more than one colleague has suggested that I do that. And of course, I've been perfectly willing to try different things. You may recall there were years ago where we met 4 times a month.
I remember that.
Now we meet 3 times a month. Some people think that's a great thing, some people think it's a terrible thing. Whenever we make a change, there are going to be some fans and there are going to be some detractors. So this is a change that was tried out. I will commit to you that we will, in fact, review this change. If it's not working out, then we won't do it anymore. But I will assure you, and everyone else here, that whatever change we make to an agenda is to try to actually enhance participation and be respectful of those who come to speak at our meetings. Case in point, the driving force, as I understood it, as to why public comment was going to be moved, of a general nature, was going to be moved to the back, is out of respect for people who were on the agenda, who end up waiting a substantial amount of time for a number of weeks in a row to actually speak about an issue that they had come down and expected to have an opportunity to speak about it at a reasonable time. It's, in some ways, it's you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Well, there's an easy solution to that. The chair, observing the multitudes in the room, can ask, how many people are here for agenda item this, or how many people are here for it? And on that particular instance, the chair can then rearrange the agenda at his prerogative. And then, when you see that the room is just a sampling of different people, not people here from the Edwards house, or people here from the subdivision, then you can, go back to the tried and true agenda.
And that would be a third approach, except there are those who criticize that approach as providing no predictability for how things are going to work, and they're really being done at the discretion and the whim of the chair.
The village manager and the clerk who puts this together have no passion either way, but they've been instructed to put it to the last, and I find it counterproductive for the public.
I appreciate your comments, because we have tried it a few times, and obviously...
I wish you would revisit it and quickly, because the next meeting will be in April, if I'm not mistaken.
The next meeting is in April.
April 7th, right?
That is correct, sir.
That'll be the election night. So it's going to be a short meeting anyhow, so.
Probably not. People have work to do.
It's traditional
No, I
that
appreciate your input. I appreciate your
the
input.
village council had a light agenda on an election night. Everybody wants to go to a victory party.
If we have work to do, we're going to get the work done.
Yeah.
But appreciate your views on that.
Yeah, but I feel strongly about it.
Plainly.
I've, grown accustomed to the friendliness of being up front with the public comments. I sometimes feel it's less friendly when I'm at the end of the train, so to speak. I like to travel first class. I'm a citizen.
Thank you, Mr. Robo. I do appreciate your input on that topic, and we have heard from other people about how that's working. Just like when meetings went from 4 to 3, and public comment preceded council comment. Some people like it, some people don't, but we do try to provide some predictability so folks know what to expect. Thank you for sharing that. Good evening, sir.
Hello, my name is Jeff DeSico, and my home's at 416 Hill Street. And recently I was informed of proposed development by Wolfpack Development to develop condos, apartments, or townhomes on Fairview. And I understand their right as landowners to develop the land as the land is zoned. I believe they have a strong desire to rezone 5212 and 5214 as multifamily home, from single-family home to multifamily, and to extend their proposed development south on Fairview. If they were able, if the property was changed from single-family to multifamily, the townhomes would extend to my back property line. And I'm here with my neighbors today, and I think they'll express some concerns too, that my backyard is currently basically a marsh or a wetland, which is graded towards my house. And I've experienced significant flooding over the years. And last year I spent about $20,000 installing a new tile drain and from Permaseal. And during not too uncommon rainstorms we have, my tile drain is still at maximum, and Permaseal said, you know, you'll probably need another pit to invest in more money. So I believe that not only will it be undesirable due to noise pollution, light pollution, all sorts of issues, parking, but in addition, the stormwater runoff and all the land that will be displaced will cause additional flooding. And I know a lot of my neighbors share the same concern, because the proposed development is at the top of the hill, and we pretty much live at the bottom of the hill, and water needs to run somewhere. So although I understand that it is unlikely that I'll be able to stop them from developing based on the current zoning, I'm strongly opposed to any change in the zoning of the two lots directly behind me. And I think their investors, banks or whatever, who are backing this development surely understand the risks of not being able to change zoning to the most profitable. So I hope the council and the planners can understand that in one hand we have increased property revenue, but on the other hand you're spending lots of money in Bart Pond to dredge it and to improve the drainage at the bottom of Hill Street, that we may increase our property value and our real estate tax, but we're going to increase issues with flooding and stormwater drainage. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you sharing that, and if they actually make a request to change the zoning, we'll... It's coming. Yes.
So my name is Betsy Dunn, and I'm
We're well
actually...
informed in advance, so thank you for sharing that. Good evening, ma'am.
I am Jeff's neighbor, and actually the gentleman there in the pink is my other neighbor. And we all actually live on Hill Street, and we all back up to these two properties. And as Jeff told you, he just spent, you know, upwards of $20,000 to repair his drain tile. When I bought my house 10 years ago, the very first thing that I did was spend $20,000 to repair my foundation for exactly the same issues. You know, Mike, on the other side of me, has had the same issue. We all have issues with water in this area. And, you know, I think the one thing that we can all pretty much rely on in life is change. It's probably the only real known And I'm not opposed to change in the village. I mean, I've very much enjoyed seeing development and everything. But when you buy a property on a nice residential street, you know, and you think that all the bordering properties around you are also single-family residential homes, you certainly do not expect to be told that, you know, there's a real estate developer that's looking, you know, offering these people behind you an exorbitant amount of money basically for their homes, you know, contingent on the fact that they're going to be able to rezone them as multifamily, you know, properties. And I would just really hope that you guys all think about that when this, you know, comes on the table. And I think that we will be here to, you know, make sure that, you know, we let our feelings be known. But I really would, you know, caution you when that comes forward.
Thank you. Your voices will be heard. Welcome back, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Mike Anderson here, 424 Hill. I'm neighbors with both Dr. DeSico and Mrs. Dunn there. And I can tell you that they spent 20 on each of their foundation repairs. I just got through spending 12 on mine to have my back of my house stabilized because of erosion issues that have caused the foundation to settle away. So we all have issues with this water coming down, and I don't think there's anybody that's on Grand around the corner or on Hill that hasn't had some issue with the drainage. A lot of it came when they resurfaced and added additional blacktop to some of the apartment buildings on Fairview. So I stand in with my neighbors on this to really please consider not rezoning that to multi-resident high density, because we have a beautiful little spot there. I mean, and you move it like Betsy had said, you move there. I grew up in that house that I live in now. They carried me in 58. Maybe they'll carry me out when I'm 98. I don't know. So I moved back when the last of my parents died, because it's such a great neighborhood. We have great neighbors. And you walk out in the back, and there's a lot of green space. It epitomizes Downers Grove. You know, we have trees, we have green space. It's very pretty. And to think that, you know, to put a development in there where the back of the buildings would come nearly halfway down the block, and potentially only three properties in from Hill Street, really changes the whole venue of that area. Parking will be an issue. There'll be snow removal. Where are they going to move the snow? Based on what they proposed for the layout of the property, they have to throw the snow somewhere. They'll be throwing it in the other neighbors' yards, who already have a problem with the water runoff. But I won't take much time. I have a list of things. Maybe at some point in the future, these will come up. But we're just here tonight to ask you to please consider not changing the zoning, maintain the integrity of the neighborhood in which we live. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, no request to do so has yet come before us, but we appreciate the heads up.
I'm Shannon Carey, 5219 Grand. My lot backs up directly to one of the proposed zoning change lots. I bought there 5 years ago, and luckily I bought Margie Sigrich's house, and she had put in 3 drain tiles already for all of the, it's a 300-foot deep lot, and so there was a lot of water back there. There's still a lot of water back there, but she did the work, lucky for me, before we moved in. And no new information, just to say when this does come before you, we're going to keep coming back, and we do oppose, and there's no one, except perhaps the people looking to sell their lots on Fairview, that is in favor of this. So I'm just standing here with my neighbors and letting you know we all feel the same way.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the heads up. Other questions or comments of a general nature?
Good evening again, Mayor.
Welcome back.
Commissioners, staff. I'm Gordon Goodman. And I wanted to ask some follow-up questions about the motion you approved on 3rd of March for helping to relocate the Edwards House. I wanted to ask about progress on implementing that approved method of relocating the Edwards House, and also about what status the development of the condominium at 942, 936 Maple has achieved.
Well, I guess we'll take that in reverse order. If we have a expected commencement of construction date for the condominium project, do we have any additional information there?
Nothing formal. The building permit plans have not yet been submitted. However, we've been in contact with the developer. We expect that submittal to be provided to us shortly. Our best guess is that we're somewhere in the end of May for construction start. Keeping in mind that the developer always has the right and ability to proceed with other activities associated with construction, like site clearing and site development, in advance of a building permit being issued for the actual condos. So we continue to work with that developer. We've also been in contact with the petitioner, Mr. Tillotson, which we did right after the March 3rd meeting, and I just walked through some options that he could pursue as part of the motion approved by the council.
So those options are still being explored, is my understanding.
I understand that the condominium developer would be able to remove trees and modify certain aspects of the site without any review or approval by the village staff, but it's my understanding that in order to demolish a structure such as those that exist on these properties, there would have to be a demolition permit issued.
That's correct.
And I wondered what the criteria for issuing a demolition permit are. And is that something that will give the village some control over the timing of modifications such as that?
Well, I'm pretty certain the criteria are spelled out in our code. I don't have them at my fingertips to recite, but I know that they're spelled out in our code. And clearly, the ability to meet that criteria has a direct impact upon the timing and the availability of any permit.
Right, but my question is more, are they mechanical, just times that have been specified, or is there a judgment factor for the staff about when the demolition permit is appropriate and when it is not?
I'm going to answer half of that and let Mr. Fieldman answer the other half. In terms of whether the criteria have been met, from my understanding and experience, it is you've either met the criteria or you haven't. If you've met the criteria, then you are, perhaps the word entitled is the wrong word, but a permit should issue. Now, the speed at which that process may happen and what factors may influence it, I will defer to Mr. Fieldman.
The requirements are very administrative in nature, and there's no discretion. There's always judgment of whether it meets the criteria or not, but no discretion in the staff as far as issuing it or not. Once the criteria are met, we are obligated to issue it. They are entitled. It is a zoning and land right, and those permits are generally handled within just a couple of days and issued very quickly.
So from past experience, that probably gives you a good idea of if all the criteria is met, then it's something that is resolved in a matter of days.
Yes, that's a useful clarification, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments of a general nature from the audience? Good evening.
Good evening. Howard Melnick, 5700 Walnut Avenue. My question or concern is, I'm shifting gears a little bit here from all this other people, and concerning about commuter parking at the Belmont Street lot, knowing that in the future Belmont Street lot is about to be upgraded. The question comes to now where The parking is for residents and non-residents, which is one of the few lots in Downers Grove that has both residents and non-resident parking. Residents pay $90 a quarter to park. Non-residents pay $130 a quarter to park. Whereas if you're a resident and you don't have a permit, you go to the standard meters and pay $3 per day, or approximately $195 per quarter. Therefore, residents are paying more than non-residents to park in that Belmont Street lot. Along with that, we also pay property taxes. We also pay taxes on the utility bills. We buy goods and services in the village of Downers Grove. And all of this process, and still, there's a 4-year wait list to get on the parking spot at Belmont. And one other thing is, at the Belmont lot, there isn't even a place to buy a quick cup of coffee. So if a commuter from another city comes in and parks, he can't even run out and buy a cup of coffee before the train comes because there's nothing close by. The reason I'm getting to this point is that currently, right now, there are 316 permits issued for non-residents, where only 151 are issued for residents. Twice as many non-residents have spots at the Belmont lot than residents. They have no vested interest in our village. We pay taxes who are residents. We buy goods and services here. Their only thing is to come in, park their car, get on the train, get off, and leave. Whereas residents, we're paying, for me, for example, I'm paying $195 a quarter to park my car, plus my property taxes, plus my utility taxes, plus I buy goods and services in the town of Downers Grove. And I care about Downers Grove since I'm here at this meeting. Whereas the non-residents do not.
The question that you've raised has been raised before.
I'm sure it has.
Which is, should we only sell permits to residents and basically not sell any to non-residents? And the manager is probably going to correct me on this, but I believe, no? I'm going to say, okay, well, you're shaking your head, that we don't have complete control of the situation.
Yes, that lot does belong completely to the village of Downers Grove. I checked with the people in the commission, and I spoke with an Allison on that, and that lot does fully belong to the village of Downers Grove. Metra does not have a right or give us money for that lot, so it's totally owned by the village.
They actually do provide us money under a contract. We have to work with them and get approvals for our permit types, pricing, and your pricing as well. So we'll be happy to follow up with you with the complete answer to that question.
This question, it's a good question, it's a fair question. It comes up every few years.
Whenever we try and change prices, it comes up.
What's that?
Whenever we try and change prices.
Well, it's even worse than that, because it's not just the issue you raised, as Commissioner Barnett points out. Every time we try to raise prices or change prices, we run into the issue of Metra threatening to, well, remove our ability to govern a lot of the parking. So if we want to actually favor our residents as much as we do, that ability is lessened even more.
Why is the Main Street lot only residents only, no non-resident permits are issued to Main Street lots?
We'll have to research a lot of this. This is a report we break out every couple of years.
Yeah, we break this out every year. I don't remember the details, but we've had this conversation, I think, every 3 years for the last decade. And the answer always is, we're limited in what we can do because of the funds that Metro will provide, the jurisdiction that Metro, they have over some lots and not other lots. So if we were to then start grabbing our marbles and only playing with those, we would lose the ability to influence others.
I understand what you're getting at, but I guess my concern is why is there 2 times as many non-resident permits issued than residents at that very lot?
Well, the answer is derived from what we're saying is that we have to cooperate with Metro with respect to the overall parking picture related to the commuter lots associated with the 3 train stations that are located within our town. The specifics, frankly, I don't have them at my fingertips for you. This is probably a good indicator of it's time to revisit this again, sort of reassess the situation, perhaps test the limits of what we can and can't do again. But as Commissioner Barnett is indicating, we've been down this road before, and we traditionally do try to do as much as best we can for our residents for the very reasons that you mentioned. So your words are heard, your sentiments are shared, and it's probably time to see, again, where things stand and what we might be able to do to maybe leverage things a little bit more in our favor.
It's really disheartening to stand at the train station and listen to people from Lyle and Bolingbrook who can come there at their leisure, get a spot, and get on a train, whereas we have to rush there early to get the metered spot. And a lot of times, There's no...
It is the competing interest that we have, obviously, to take care of our residents. Metra's interests are not just Downers Grove. Their interests are much broader, and they're pushing for their interests. We're pushing for, of course, as we always do, advocating for our residents, and we strike these middle grounds, which have the effect of not making everyone happy.
Right. I guess I was also misinformed by being told that the lot was 100% Downers Grove lot.
It is a 100% Downers Grove lot, and we'll work with you to explain the interaction of the agreements we have with funding and limitations on pricing.
Thank you much. Thank you.
But thank you for bringing it up again. It's probably time to revisit the issue.
Great.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing the answer.
Mayor,
Look forward to seeing you back here.
Mayor, last time we did that, we did tilt things as far as we thought we could get away with tilting.
Yes.
And
Yes, Commissioner Barnett's right. When we do have the engagement, we do advocate as much as we can for as much as we can. Welcome back.
Laura Bowen, 829 Clyde Drive. I'm back up here again. Before I forget, I want to comment about the microphones again. I wish that you people, when you talk, whether it's the council or the manager and the deputy manager, would speak into your microphones. We're just sitting right here and we cannot hear the village manager speak. And I've attended the last 2 months of meetings. I picked up the March 11th local paper, and I read information in there that was presented at the manager's report that I never heard when I was here. So I don't know why it's so difficult. I wish the council would direct the management to speak into the microphones so that we come here to listen and to be a part of it. We're not sitting at home in front of a TV cable station. And regarding the financials, I lost my job in 2008. I was an executive assistant and office manager for a president and company owner in Burridge who closed his company. And I am making half of what I was making then. I'm not a government employee that is guaranteed a taxpayer-funded increase every year. My husband, about 8 years ago, his company gave the entire company a pay cut and eliminated all travel to prevent anyone from having to be laid off. I think everyone has to take a cut. Everyone in a home has to cut their budget when things go bad. And I don't get why everybody thinks we're justified in getting money that everyone has to take a sacrifice about. We can always take a cut of our salaries here at Village Hall. They are quite substantial. I thought there was a limit on hiring, and I find out from the paper on March 4th that you hired someone from the Westmont Village to work full-time in Downers Grove. So things must not be too tough here if we can have new hires in the village of Downers Grove. We missed you, Mr. Jose, at the last meeting. I wanted to address a comment that you made to me at that meeting. When I asked for a response to my suggestion to put a sign at Main and 59th Street to stop traffic from cutting through at rush hour on Washington Street, because we're speaking about traffic issues there. And you mentioned that no one reads signs. Well, I found that interesting because I understand that there's a lot of signs out there, and I asked the village for that report for the last 5 years. The report I got was for the last 4 years. It was undated, so I didn't know what the date range was. The next day, I finally found someone who could read the report, because the Director of Public Works could not read the report, and only the people that are associated with the signs in Downers Grove could interpret the report, which is not real customer-friendly. Determined in the last 4 years, we've installed 733 signs at the cost of more than $48,000. And then, of course, we have, the village is now considering installing new entry signs to the village at the cost of $250,000. I think everybody knows we're in Downers Grove, and I don't understand why there's a priority. All of a sudden, we're focused on signs. The sign ordinance has to be reviewed. We're putting in a lot of signs, and we can't put too little signs to prevent traffic from cutting through at rush hour. at Clyde Estates, but we can spend $250,000 on new signs.
It's actually, there's only 100,000 budgeted for that.
Well, that's this year. But then if you read further, it'll add up to $250,000.
Maybe.
But none of which has actually been appropriated.
In all fairness, only 100,000 has been set aside to potentially.
But the wish is, it's right here in the paper, 10 signs at $25,000. As I added up, that's $250,000. That's your wish list.
And if I could, I'd like to correct the record on something here. Actually, what I said was that people ignore signs.
Then why do we install so many?
We install them because you're going to get a good number of people that actually follow, but you're not going to get everybody. And that's why when we're talking about developments that are on the edges of neighborhoods, we try to put in things like pork chops at the end of different driveways to keep folks from making turns into residential neighborhoods when they don't need to, so that they're not creating more cut-through traffic. My point was simply that, and I actually said I'm willing to support the sign. I don't have a problem putting the sign on. I just don't expect it to be particularly effective.
Well, I don't think your plan for Clyde Estates is real effective either, and it doesn't seem that the people that live there in the neighborhood, their comments have really mattered that much because
I think we've had a couple of neighborhood meetings.
Yes, you
We've
have.
had all kinds of public comment here.
Well, I'm not
The project
finished.
has changed many times.
I'm not
I think
finished.
The idea.
Actually, if I could ask both of you to, first of all, Ms. Bowen, if you could focus your comments to the entire council and not individuals.
Okay.
Commissioner Jose, and we'll not have any more individual exchanges. Thank you.
The plan so far calls for the closing off of Washington Street out to Main. You're not going to stop any traffic. It's just going to reroute. The cars are just going to go to 61st Street. They're going to come in on 61st and they're going to go out on the 61st. They're not going to quit coming through Clyde Estates because you've got the 59th Street light that is the cause of it. And they want to avoid traffic jams, and they're in a rush at rush hour, and that's what people do. They find a less traveled way to avoid traffic. And they do it at Main Street in Maple. It took me 5 minutes to get out of Lincoln Center this morning because everybody was turning and the light was going. There's no pause. So that's the only way to get through traffic is to avoid it. So I'm telling you, cutting off Washington between the two triangles is not going to solve it. You're going to put a big hole in the highest place. I'd like you to address where the problems of water are. You shouldn't be spending $2 million when all Clyde Estates wants is our streets paved. We're talking about finances here. We're talking about money that needs to be cut. So use the money that we don't need to go overboard and put ditches in everybody's yard. It's going to cause a liability for us. If I have people visit me, they won't be able to park in front of my house because they won't be able to get out in front of my house because there's a ditch there. What about the liability there? We're paying a stormwater tax because we can't let water go off our property. My property is below the road. The water doesn't go off my property. It stays there and I want it there. It sinks into the trees that I have planted there. It's not going anywhere. If you put a ditch in my yard and you put a ditch in my neighbor's yard, I'm going to get their water. Our water is going to go to his water, his yard. So you're defeating the purpose. Why are we paying a stormwater tax if you're going to spend it on ditches to move our water to other people's yard? It doesn't make sense. Solve the problems where they are at St. Joe's Creek watershed, at the bottom of the hill. Fix the problems where the creeks are and where they're flooding the houses. We haven't had houses flood. We have water in our yards. And fix it where it's a problem, not in our whole 65-house neighborhood. That's my issue tonight.
I understand your issue on that. You've expressed it many times. And I do know, and I hope you recognize that some of your neighbors have a different view. That there are some folks in the neighborhood that actually are in support of some of the measures that are being implemented. And this goes back to the issue of not everyone agrees with the traffic calming issues, and everybody agrees with the ditching issues. But it is something that I know from speaking with some of your neighbors that there are a number of them are in favor of these measures. I fully appreciate that you're not.
You have to agree that this is the highest level of elevation in the village where Clyde Estates sits, where you want to put the hole in the ground. It's not solving any problem where you're putting a hole.
And I fully appreciate
You're paying money to a consultant and to a design
I appreciate
engineer
that that's your
company.
view. You've articulated it very well, very clearly. I just for everyone's acknowledgement, and I'm sure you've heard it as well, there are others in your neighborhood that disagree.
I think you need to reprioritize where the money is spent that we're putting into the village.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Any other questions or comments of a general nature? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for taking our comments. I appreciate that. I'm here to support my neighbors with the proposition of the rezoning on Fairview Avenue of those two houses. I understand they've been an eyesore for the neighborhood for a number of years, but I don't think that putting a townhome or multifamily residence there is going to solve any issues. We're only here because of the resourcefulness of some of our neighbors, a few of them. I'm confident that if this does go to any further, that this is only a fraction of the people that will be here at following meetings. But I do want to go on record to say that I'm opposed to that proposal. I live at 405 Hill, and another issue I think is traffic in that neighborhood. What happens is those two houses currently sit at a location where traffic merges from two lanes to a single lane. They have to consider where traffic is going to go that, for the people who live there. That's going to become a problem right there because that's a bottleneck. Also, there's no overflow parking in that area. There's no way that they're going to have a big enough lot there to park as many cars as going to be at that residence. So the overflow parking is going to end up on Hill Street, which is right in front of my house. There's not enough parking there already. So I just want to go on record to say that I'm also opposed to it. Thank you again for hearing our comments. We appreciate it.
Thank you for being here and sharing them. And actually, maybe we can do a little bit of a public service, as long as, obviously, there's a number of people in the audience here that are very interested in this issue about a potential request to rezone 5212 and 5214 Fairview Avenue. Hypothetically speaking, and Madam Attorney, you weren't going to get away with not saying anything tonight. Maybe just very generically, understand this is generically, this is not what things could happen differently in reality. What would be the process for someone to make that rezoning request, to go through the steps of what they would have to do, what they would have to submit? I don't mean the paperwork, I mean the process, our process of going through the Plan Commission and then the Village Council, the number of hearings we would have, opportunities for public comment. If such a request were made, what timeline that would follow, what process, very, very high level generally what that would follow. Since we have a number of folks here tonight that are obviously very interested in this issue, if that request were made, again, generally speaking, how would it ordinarily play out?
Typically, a petition would be filed for rezoning, some rezoning application there. In there, following that, there would be a neighborhood meeting, notice sent out to all the neighborhood. From the neighborhood meeting, then there's a formal hearing at the Plan Commission. Again, notice would go out and it would be published in the newspaper.
I'm going to repeat it when she's done.
From the Plan Commission, then, based on the Plan Commission's recommendation, that petition would be forwarded to the Village Council for both a first reading, where a presentation would be made. Again, there would be notice on the public agenda, and then for final vote, again, at a council meeting on the active agenda. So it is a several-month process.
So, okay, thank you. So it's at least 5 steps would be involved. One would be the petitioner would have to file a petition to rezone the parcels. There would be number 2, there would be a neighborhood meeting, which you would learn about this and have an opportunity to get some more information about it. Number 2 would then go before the Plan Commission. So there would be a hearing for the Plan Commission here at Village Hall. That would be noticed. There would be an opportunity for public comment. The Plan Commission is not the final decider of that issue. They would make a recommendation one way or the other based upon the evidence presented to them and recommendations of staff to the Village Council. That would then come before the Village Council for a workshop or a first reading. So there would be one meeting like this tonight where we would simply talk about it. Again, hear input from all those with an interest in it, hear input from staff. There would be no vote taken at that time. And then there would be a subsequent meeting at which any final action would be taken. So at least a 5-step process, so to speak. And it sounds like in the ordinary course that takes months.
About 4 months.
About 4 months, and that's just based on historical experience. What's that disclaimer that they always use about securities, past performances, future performance? Don't hold us to that, but just to give you an idea, if they file such a request, that's the process that would take place. So there'll be many opportunities to hear from you again. Thank you. We're taking off the agenda, I want to make sure you have that.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Say something. Any other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience? Good evening.
Good evening. John Plivka, 6016 Washington. Correct me if I'm wrong. Before this gets to the Plan Commission, the developer will be dealing with staff on his proposal?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. This is something that's bothered me for a number of years. I had a meeting with Manager Fieldman a few years ago. The perception when this gets to council level, someone from the village will present this development or request for a zoning change, and staff has worked with the developer for months. The individual residents are left at their own devices, generally individually, to try and build a case, their case, to present to you. I think this would be an ideal time and an ideal situation to present to you an idea of appointing an advocate for the residents if this should take place and a developer starts to talk to our staff, so that the residents, someone who would be impartial, an advocate that would act on their behalf to help them present their case. We have staff helping a developer meet the requirements and present his case, possibly an out-of-town developer. The residents are paying our staff to help someone. We are not getting the same help from our staff. It's available if you have the ability to pin the staff down and know what you want.
I understand your point, and I see the good intention nature of it, although let me take issue with presumption in your comment. Staff isn't an advocate for a petitioner. Village staff is there to try to see if whomever comes to them can present something that can work within the rules that we have. We try to be facilitators, not regulators, as much as possible. So staff is encouraged, if, for example, if you were to go to staff and say, well, I would like to put a fence up. Well, you can't do it because this and this and this. Is there any way that I could do it? Well, let's look at some options. I think that as a resident, you would want staff to be open-minded. And if there were options within our code, within the rules, without being fair to other people in your neighborhood, that would allow you to achieve your goal, you would want staff to facilitate you in that regard. The word developer conjures up someone with horns from New Jersey that's coming here trying to put in something we all don't want. But let's remember that staff deals with people every single day that are you and me, back porches, benches. Commissioner Rankin deals with a lot of different towns in her private life of people just trying to improve their homes. Maybe they're building a new house, maybe they're doing an addition, maybe they're putting a deck in, maybe they're putting a fence in. And they want staff to help facilitate them, if possible, within the rules, within reason, to facilitate their goal. We try to make that available to everybody on an indiscriminate basis. Yes, bigger projects take more time than, say, a fence, but staff doesn't start out with, I want this or I want that. They're trying to facilitate an outcome that fits within the parameters of our ordinance and what we've established as necessary, desirable, and et cetera, for our community. So oftentimes what comes before staff will be something that can't be done. It might be your fence permit. But maybe there's something else that can achieve your goal and yet still remain within our rules. You would certainly want somebody to help them with that. So when staff is doing that for anybody, they're just giving the same treatment or benefit that they would for whoever might come to them as a petitioner. And then there's also certain rules that govern requests for land use treatment. There's certain things you have to do or should do, and staff obviously tries to work within those parameters as well. What we try to do in terms of advocacy is clearly all staff will do is present based on what these folks have asked for, and here's what our rules are. Does this peg fit in this hole? Yes or no? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no, unless you make some variations or some exceptions, and then we have criteria for whether those get granted or not. All that gets hashed out before, initially with staff, because if somebody's asking for something that they're just not going to get, you probably don't want to put them through the whole rigmarole of 5-step meetings to come to the village council and be told no. You probably want to tell them early on, that's not going to fly because it doesn't fit within our rules. So staff also helps in that regard of basically deterring people from achieving unrealistic expectations if they're asking for something that's not going to fit within our parameters. So I understand what you're saying, but I just want to remove the premise that there's some, well, we're for the developer. It's really just trying to facilitate whoever the petitioner is, whether it's a private resident or it's someone who's putting in a multifamily development, a commercial property, whatever it is, trying to be facilitators and not regulators. I know sometimes that can be perceived as, oh, they're helping so-and-so, and I understand that perception is oftentimes reality. But I know that you probably wouldn't want a community neutral to be overseeing your fence permit if you were trying to just get a fence in. Your neighbor might not like you the way you cut your lawn last week. So it gets very complicated. So what we instead try to do is to make sure there are multiple opportunities to hear from folks throughout the process about where they're coming from, provide information, and make sure that ultimately the advocates for all the stakeholders involved are the village council members. That's our job, is to be advocates for you.
All right, and I understand both sides of the equation here, but again, the perception is that someone from the village stands right here, presents this developer's case, and he's worked, or the staff has worked with him for months, got this fine-tuned.
Right.
And that person generally recommends approval.
Only because typically when staff says we're not going to recommend approval, it usually never comes before us.
Okay.
So what you don't see are all the times that staff has told them.
All right, my request would be now to appoint an individual that, or give a name to these residents of an individual that they could contact to get help. And so that you're not talking to the village manager one day, the assistant village manager, somebody, from public works, get one person.
If what you're talking about is a point of contact.
Correct.
I think we probably
We already do that.
do that.
It's the same project manager that's working with the developer, and we do that on purpose. We've had several occasions where once notice of a development goes out, we have neighbors that are objecting. We actually meet with the neighbors and coach them on how to object in the same way that we coach the petitioners how to meet our code. We've had several people come in on recent developments where we played the same advocacy role on behalf of the developer and the advocacy role on behalf of the resident, all focused only on the set of codes that are placed in front of us by the village council.
So it's a good idea.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Other questions or comments of a general nature? The Blackhawks must be playing tonight because this is a hat trick, Dr. Griffin.
I just wanted to follow on this issue that was raised here. I didn't know this issue was going to be raised, but it's something that is very dear to my heart, too, of having the residents who are involved in a discussion before the Plan Commission and/or the Village Council have proper contact with the staff so that their position is developed in a way that is likely to be well understood and perhaps even favored by the commission or the council. I specifically wanted to ask about the proposed development on Maple Avenue of the Marquise Maple, and whether there was any staff involvement with the people, Douglas Gilbert and all the experts who were brought in by the residents and the petitioners online who appealed. Was there any staff involvement with those people who opposed the development?
Yes. For staff to answer that question.
Yes.
In what way?
We told them how you could argue against the development, applying the standards and how the standards are applied. We coached them on what types of objections would be within the standards.
Would that be with anyone in particular?
All of the standards.
No, I mean any individual resident in particular.
I'd have to ask the project manager on that. I know that he summarized several conversations with objecting residents.
Yes, I'd be very interested in that, and perhaps the staff would, the council would ask for a report documenting that. I would very much like to see that report.
We'll take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments of a general nature?
Laura Bowen, 829 Clyde Drive, getting back to the Clyde Estates Development Project. We didn't have a coach from the staff or from the council to coach us, those opposed to the development project, how to address the opposition statements. No one from the council was at either of these community meetings, nor from the management staff. So I would think that if the village is going to put out, you had, I think, $3.5 million was your dollar amount before, and now it's down to, I think, $2.5 million, maybe $3. But labor costs always go up, and those change orders always add up too. So why wouldn't you be interested, with all of the outcry we had, be interested in, I asked specifically for them to record the meeting, the second meeting, which was the one I was able to go to, and they refused to record the meeting. Why would you not want to record a meeting that involves 65 residences with a development project of this magnitude, just to have it on record? Because none of you were there, none of the management staff was there, and you could listen to it later. The whole point of me getting up here every week is to hopefully change the procedures and correct things that can be made better for the next problem that comes down the road from residents on Hill Street, for instance. Why don't you want to interact with people and help them? They're paying a lot of money to this village, and it's just like nobody cares about the impact that these projects have on our homes. We've been there for some of these people in Clyde Estates for 45 years. And 50 years, and it's like, it doesn't matter. They didn't go to the meeting, so I guess they don't care. Really? They couldn't go to the meeting. They work night shift. They're unable because they're elderly. They don't drive at night. They're handicapped. There's a lot of reasons. You wouldn't even have a meeting on a Saturday morning for us. A lot of people work. I told you, we can't get to a meeting at 6:30. It's difficult. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, seeing no one else standing up, we'll thank everyone for their comments tonight, and as always, regardless of what portion of the meeting they may come up in. That brings us to item 12, council member new business. This is an opportunity for members of the village council to raise any items of new business with their colleagues on the council. Commissioner Barnett, any items of new business?
I have none, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Jose?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Olson? No. Commissioner Rankin? Commissioner Newstead? No. Commissioner Durkin?
Not tonight.
I don't have any items of new business, but I do want to leave you all with a Irish blessing. May in the spirit of St. Patrick's Day, may the road rise to meet your feet. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warmly on your face. And may the rains fall softly upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hands. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin? Aye. Commissioner Barnett?